I get really bad abdominal pains and chest pains and back pains. It hurts. A tablespoon of sugar, a tablespoon of peanut butter, raw mustard. I was like that. Keith Urban gave me a hug and kiss. That was my best one. I'll probably jump in joy and scream my head off. Actually, clear area. Have patient raise arms. Have patient raise arms overhead. So I'm glad that people are.
Remember her? She was known as, obviously, the Hiccup Girl. She made national news. She was on the Today Show, and she talked about it. They're getting a hug from country superstar Keith Urban. Her name, Jennifer Mee. And again, she was talking about all the different remedies. She would hiccup 50 times in a minute, nonstop. Well, you know what's going on with her life now? She's in her early 20s, and she's charged with first-degree murder. She came onto the scene in 2007, and she says that all that notoriety and fame, she took a wrong road. She got in with the wrong crowd. Next thing you know, she is in on a murder, allegedly facing those charges. Jury selection beginning today. This is in the 2010 death of Shannon Griffin. So what will happen with her and her future? Joining us now, Josh Rojas from Philly Pay News 9. Josh, again, this story just mind-boggling. Lay out what the prosecution says here for us, Josh.
Well, Mike, they say back in October 2010, Jennifer Mee, the Hiccup Girl, befriended Shannon Griffin on an obscure website called Moco Space. She started contacting him, and prosecutors say lured him to a vacant St. Petersburg home with the promise of selling him $55 worth of marijuana, which they didn't have. The whole plan was to rob this man and then leave. Now, the two co-defendants with me at the time, LaRon Rayford and Lamont Newton, Mee understood that they were waiting behind the house with a gun to rob him. She got him to go behind the house. Prosecutors say she took off at that point, and at that point, those two defendants tussled with the man, and prosecutors believe Rayford pulled the trigger. Rayford was sentenced to life in prison last week. Mee is now the second defendant up on trial in a first-degree murder charge. In fact, the jury is in the fourth floor of this courthouse right now picking that jury, and Lamont Newton, his trial will come later this year. Mike?
All right. So now she told different stories, didn't she, Josh, where she originally said it was some kind of love triangle between Shannon Griffin, the victim, and one of her accomplices here. And then she broke down and said she lured him. Is that the way it went down?
That's right. Police say she gave a couple of different versions, initially talking about this love triangle. They say that in fact, Jennifer Mee, the Hiccup Girl, was in fact dating one of the defendants, Lamont Newton, and then talked about this love triangle between Rayford and this other girl. So things were a little murky there, but then detectives say she finally broke down and admitted that she had sent these text messages to the victim, luring him to the house. Now, of course, her attorney says there's no way to prove she's the one who sent those text messages, and he's arguing that the state does not have enough evidence to convict Mee of first-degree murder. But of course, the state says when you're involved in a felony crime, it doesn't matter whether you pulled the trigger or not. You're still going to get charged with first-degree murder. That's why all three of them are facing that charge. In fact, the Rayford's sister, he was the first man convicted in life in prison, just told our station that she believes Mee was the mastermind behind this because her brother would have never met Shannon Griffin if it weren't for Mee meeting him on this website and then sending him those text messages. Yeah. Now, we should tell you that Mee's attorney did offer to plea bargain this out for 15 years. The state turned that request down. Trevina, the Hiccup Girl's attorney, says that was the maximum amount of risk that they were willing to take on this, so now they're going to take their chances with the jury. Got it.
Hey, you know, I think what is so mind-boggling here, among other things besides the hiccups, is, I mean, she seemed like this shy kid, couldn't get rid of the hiccups. How did she go from that to getting involved, you know, or we're still trying to figure out her legal involvement in this murder, what, roughly 3 years later? What do we know more about her backstory?
Yeah, Mike, it's interesting. 2007 is when she skyrocketed to fame with those 5 weeks of nonstop hiccups. Made a lot of national news back then, even international headlines. She says the fame went to her head. She ended up running away from home about a year, 2 years later, disappeared for about 24 hours. That made some local news. It was because her parents had taken away her cell phone from her. Then after that, she started hanging out with these other two guys, and that's when she got into this trouble. So me herself will say the fame got to her head. Mike?
Got it. Hey, Josh, thanks. Nice work. Keep us posted on this one. We're going to follow this. And then let's bring in our one-man justice squad, Jeff Gold. Jeff, how do you see this one? Again, you know, she's told the different stories. And, you know, if the prosecutors can prove she lured this guy, Shannon Griffin, in, is she guilty no matter if she pulled the trigger or not?
Right. It's a good case for the viewers to understand the different ways to get convicted of murder. Of course, we all know that if you pull the trigger, you know you intentionally kill somebody, that's murder. Another way is to be an accomplice, which is to assist in that. And that may be something that the state can prove that she assisted, either before or after, by the way. Another way is conspiracy, when individuals talk about doing something and then actually do it. Most likely in this case, the fourth way would be felony murder, that she simply was part and parcel of the robbery attempt, and that went awry and he died. In most states, including in Florida, that's first-degree murder. All you have to do is be part of it. Sometimes I explain to a client that you can just be outside the bank and your job is to look for the cops, and your co-defendant inside takes a mallet and hits the teller over the head, and he dies. You're going to be charged with felony murder, even though you didn't know he was going to do it, but you did know he was going to rob the bank. So that's the most likely case here.
You know, the victim's cousin was in court, and this was a bond hearing, and bond denied, by the way, you know, and he was tearful. And he said, you know, Shannon Griffin just thought he was going on a date. You know, he was, you know, innocent guy, thought he was maybe flirting back and forth online. Next thing you know, he's in this life or death struggle, and he lost. He ends up dead. So back to the matter at hand. So it's not first-degree murder where she pulls the trigger, but if she's the player that lured him, she's in trouble here.
Right. If she's part of the felony, that's all that's necessary, is that she was a part and parcel of that felony, and then someone dies in the course. Another example I give sometimes is you could go into the convenience store, rob the convenience store, and back out. And when you're backing out in your car, you run over a little old lady. You know, and you could be the passenger in that car. You don't have to be driving it either, but you were part of the robbery. Somebody died in the process. That's felony murder. And that's why the state's not accepting 15 years, because they consider it heinous. In fact, they think that she was the beginning of this. I don't know if she was the mastermind or not, but it was her idea. She laid back. On the other hand of it, Mike, she does have a disability. She's taking Thorazine, which is an antipsychotic drug. It's an old antipsychotic drug for schizophrenia. So, you know, she may have a defense to this.
Interesting. All right, we're going to continue to follow it. Nice work, Jeff. And again, you know, she just talked about this newfound fame in her life. And by the way, no excuse because this kid ends up dead, but this newfound fame, and she just thought she could do no wrong. And again, ends up with the wrong crowd. We'll see how things end up.